100%. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to STRonomics. I'm Bill Faith, joined by my good friend Kenny Bedwell. Today's topic that we're going to talk about on the podcast is
Airbnbbust. Oh, you've got Airbnbbust up as our title. It's technically Airbnbbust, but whatever.
No, that's who the heck is calling Airbnbbust? It's Airbnbbust. I mean, they need to learn their hashtags.
There we go.
Come on.
Okay.
I mean, is it a bust, Kenny?
Well, it's a bust for some people.
So I mean, I think it's fear mongering in my opinion, and it's fear mongering by influencers in our industry to sell their courses, sell their teaching, sell their products.
Yeah.
There's no question that rents have gone down for a lot of people. It was funny. I had made it very, very public. I share everything that I was down like 37% in January and February. I've been able to recapture that. And 2 weeks ago, after the 4th of July, when we're recording this just after the 4th of July, I finally got up above 2022. I was like 1.8% revenue ahead. And then boom, in the last 2 weeks, because I had a couple of literally 3 days of vacancy at 2 properties, but it was so expensive. Now I'm down like 3.5%, right? And it's just ebb and flow. But you know what? For me, I think even Steven's not too bad, with 2023 over 2022.
Yeah.
So you've been, when did you start, Kenny? When did you buy your first property? When did you get into STR?
2018.
So 2018.
Yep.
And you had 2 years prior to COVID inflating everything. So very similar to myself, you've seen what was happening. And I want to know what your gut feeling is, not necessarily the real data, but as a host, not Kenny, the STR Insights guy, do you really believe that Airbnb, that short-term rentals are dead? And whether it's arbitrage, co-hosting, owning, vacation rental markets, urban, it doesn't matter. We're all one industry, right?
Right.
Is it dead or is it just corrected?
It's definitely corrected. So it's just, I don't know. For me, it's like just a little more realistic. Like it's more of like a legitimate business investment strategy rather than just like, I can buy a property and make money, or get rich quick. That's how a lot of people have kind of been, a lot of, I guess, influencers in the space have been like, oh yeah, all you got to do is, especially arbitragers, go buy 20 units, at, $5,000 to furnish them, throw them up, start cash flowing, you'll be a millionaire in no time. And it's like that 100% gives off vibes of get rich quick, and at some point,
and there's people that have done that.
Yeah, no, it's true. There are people
that have been very successful.
Right. But look at all the other trends of the things that are get rich quick, kind of thing that aren't necessarily, and I'm going to pick on some things and some listeners might not be happy with that. But for example, cryptocurrency, and the whole, and sure, crypto's still here. It's not going anywhere. I'm still invested in it. But it's like this whole, there was this craze of people oh, I got to buy crypto and, not just Bitcoin, but Dogecoin. Remember that, and Elon Musk and the whole, get on. Yeah,
and full disclosure, I never invested into crypto, Kenny, but I followed it, and I remember when he went on to host SNL, and boom, Dogecoin or Dogecoin or whatever, it just plummeted, at that point, because there's no real security behind it, right? And
sounds like rental arbitrage, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pick on rental arbitrage. Sure. I mean, but there's a lot of people, Sean Raskovich, TJ Tajani, Noble Crawford, these guys that are influenced, but they've been very successful, in rental arbitrage. I think it's the timing of the investor and the mentality of the people that got in that just, went in, bought property, people that bought the average property. We've talked about that, right? The elevation, there's 2 sections of this market that can thrive, in my opinion. It's lower price volume, it's Walmart, or, it's going to be your Nordstrom at the top. The middle is what's getting, eaten away. The problem that I see with the people that got into the multifamily, the arbitrage, the apartment units, the standard 3-2s, instead of being 30 feet from the river right here, they're across the street. right there, or the people that are tier 4 or 5 at the beach, or don't have the views, or you can't walk to Dollywood or Gatlinburg, they're average. And they have to be super. They have to be a super property, or it's the volume game on the bottom. The middle's getting squeezed right now, as it is in America. Middle class is getting squeezed. Those $40,000 to $100,000 jobs are getting squeezed. Applebee's, quick service restaurants, your Applebee's, your Ruby Tuesdays, they're getting squeezed. They're getting squeezed by Chipotle and by Chick-fil-A, and then higher end restaurants on top. This happens about every 10 to 15 years in the United States, and it's going to happen globally too. You're a data guy, it goes like this. There's never been a time to where it just goes straight up.
The problem is the problem with what a lot of people have been preaching, and I even made this mistake too, is this idea of like a smooth revenue appreciation, right? So we assume like every single year we're just going to make more and more and more money because, oh yeah, well, prices go up, each year. And I even, before, like in the mastermind, I saw people in their pro formas like, okay, well, this year it's going to do this, the next year it's going to do a little bit more, and at 5% increase. And then at this point, I'll be, at like a 30% cash on cash. And then the deal is like extremely worth it. And it's like, you should have never underwrote it that way. It should have been underwritten as like the current today, what you believed it could have done, because you will see dips. Like any other investment, there's dips, there's ebbs and flows where it's going to go up and it's going to go down. Sure, over time, if we look at a trend, it should be going up. That's pretty normal. But year to year, it definitely doesn't do that. There's some years it will be down and some years it'll be up, and that's normal. But I don't think a lot of investors knew that, because a lot of them didn't have experience in this industry or in general with making investments and understanding that concept. I'm young and a part of that, and I'm learning just like everybody else. But I see it in the data, and then I still see people trying to do that, and I have to like say, whoa, hold on, like here's what's going on. This isn't actual reality to try to estimate things this way. So
I'm going to piggyback on that, because I think it's one of the fundamental flaws of newbies that get into this business. And then the very first property that I did, I looked at the same way, because I had the long-term mentality as opposed to the short-term mentality. So if you're trying to get out of your W-2 and you're listening to this right now, or you're moving towards retirement, it's the same thing. I'm trying to create this cash flow to replace my other income when I get to retirement. If you're making $250,000 a year and you want to quit your job, you need to replace that $250,000 a year, or whatever you forecast, whatever your budget is, right? So it's the exact same thing. I have never once, outside of that very first property, Kenny, factored in appreciation into the pro forma. It's in my mind when I'm looking and analyzing markets to go into to see what historical appreciation is, and never once have I factored in a cost seg benefit, ever. For me, it's been purely cash flow, and really almost all the time it's been cash flow as opposed to even cash on cash return. I only really look at cash on cash return and that percentage on smaller deals, because I do bigger deals. And when I say bigger, I'm not talking $2-3 million. I mean, I think small deals are $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. Bigger deals for me, even, just FYI, if you don't know how, I'm not buying $2 million properties. My deals are, the sweet spot for me is like 600, 650 to $1 million, right? This place I'm sitting at right now in Montana, I paid $985 for. Kenny, I'm under contract for a property that's $950. That's like the high end. I paid $1.6 million for one property, that Banner Oak property. So I think and I still believe there's this sweet spot of like 500 to $1 million. Mm-hmm. And it's probably the majority of that sweet spot right now is probably 500 to 700,000. Kenny said it 100% correct. And I've been preaching this since I started doing this influencer bullshit. You have to treat this like a business. Profit and losses, balance sheets, the underwriting, and most importantly, you have to identify why you are buying an individual property. And in my opinion, it should never be for your appreciation, and it should never be for a cost seg benefit. Now, the cost seg benefit is where a lot of you that are wealthy, that are high income earner W-2s, that are successful entrepreneurs, you're looking to park money and take advantage of the cost seg benefit. Ryan Bakey on the super team, has tons of content about this, to where, imagine that you go in and you buy $1 million property and you think it's going to have, 10%, cash on cash. And you go and you get your $300,000 cost seg benefit. But then the rents dip by 20%, like they've done for most people over the last year. Now you're in a negative cash flow position, and that's probably going to be substantiated over multiple years, maybe 3, 4, 5 years. You now have a bad investment for the short term, that quick fix of taking that hit like Pookie Bear in New Jack City off that crack pipe, right, to get your cost seg benefit. That is not a reason to invest.
Yeah, no, yeah, and a lot of people are doing that. But backing up though to the main topic, and I don't think I was able to address it outright. Do I think there is this Airbnb bust? Yeah, reel it in. In reality, no, I don't. I do think for some people, they probably are experiencing some sort of bust, and it can vary market to market. But there was the report out that, was tweeted. I've actually been interviewed by 2 different news outlets, like one by like the city of Phoenix, like ABC News in Phoenix, and like Skift.
Big time.
Yeah,
big time, Kenny.
I know, big time. Yeah, no, I mean, they're like, it made a big splash. And the problem is the source where it supposedly came from, isn't responding and owning up to it. So it was literally,
is it back from that all rooms data that was put out?
Yeah. Well, yeah, supposedly. And that's the thing. Like, somebody asked me, actually, another news source asked me, you didn't, in your analysis, you just said the company that claimed it, which was Reventure, and then versus STR Insights, and you didn't put all the rooms. And I said, because all the rooms isn't taking ownership of it. The guy Reventure is saying that all the rooms owned it. So anyway, we don't even know where it came from. It's almost like rumors and, like this stuff, and that gets all these people hyped up and excited. But bringing it all into focus, saturation in this Airbnb bust is never on a market level. It's always on a property by property basis. Demand varies market to market, but it also varies by property size. You've talked about this before, Bill, with, 3 bedrooms. Why 3 bedrooms are typically a mistake to buy in most markets, because it's this weird, like, not quite one family will fit there, and then it's not quite big enough for 2 families, so you've got to and we're seeing that in some markets like Kissimmee and North Georgia and Broken Bow, where like 3 bedrooms are just, I've advised people this: change your listing from a 3 bedroom to a 2 bedroom and you'll get more bookings. And they're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, the data is saying like 2 bedrooms are making almost the same as 3 bedrooms in some of those markets, And so it's like, look at, like, there's some trends, but when you look at the 5s and the 6s and the 7 bedroom, they're performing completely differently than the 3 bedrooms are, and they might be up or wherever. It just depends on the market and what's going on. But saturation is never on just a general market level.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm sitting in I own 2 3 bedrooms. I hate 3 2s. Hate it with a passion. Thank God this is 3 2.5. And that extra half bathroom, Eric Carrico is actually, one of the OGs in my mastermind with you, is one of the guys that kind of taught me how important bathrooms were. I mean, I didn't think they were as important as they are today. I would never buy a 4-2. I would never buy a 5. I wouldn't go to Island Park where there's a ton of like 6 1s and 7 3s, just these ridiculous deals. But this is a 3-2. Honestly, I wouldn't buy it if it wasn't for that right there, right? And my only other 3-2 is beachfront. So I wouldn't buy a 3-2 off the lake, off the river, off the ski slope. I wouldn't buy it off the beach. There's a couple of things. The reason I muted, on the other side of the road right here, there's a train that just went by and you would hear it, right? So there's some downsides to this property, but you have to make sure that the things are going to overcome it unless you want to fall into that bust category. The 3-2 is, it's a very affordable configuration, but I think it's one of the biggest contributors to Airbnb bust, or the people that are not thriving. Yeah. Because of the fact that it's not really a multi-family property. And when you're trying to maximize ADR, it's really challenging. Kenny, you have 2 kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have 2 kids. How do the Bedwells and the Fates vacation together or go on a business trip together, whatever it is, with both our families in one house that's a 3-2? We cannot.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. We could make a 4-bedroom work, right? Maybe even a 3 with a loft could work. And there's a lot of people, and that's the other thing. Well, I don't want to get into that whole thing because that has nothing to do with Airbnbbust, but um, it's just it's too easy of a path to go down. You know what I mean? I am a huge believer that if you've done things right from the beginning, you invested into the right property, you invested into the right bedroom count in a market. And as Kenny says, that is a huge deal. And I kind of just want to go back real quick. I think people default to 3-2s, Kenny, because that's where they can get the best deal. If
Yeah.
they think they're getting the best deal, the
Right.
lowest cost deal per bedroom, and it's kind of no man's land. The property I have under contract right now is a 2-bedroom. And I literally try to jump from 2 to 4. And if I can get to 5, that's really important for me because sometimes even multifamily doesn't work. And when I say the term multifamily guests, does they're gonna be staying in the property with a 4-bedroom. Really, 5 is kind of for me. I'm trying to think right now. I own one 4-bedroom, so I have 2 3s, 1 4. Everything else is 5 and above, right? And just because I like those larger properties, and the reason it gives me more marketability. And, I hang my hat on marketing, but it really starts with that property dynamic.
Yeah. And I want to make it clear, like a lot of people, they're like, well, how do I tell if a market's saturated? How do I, and then once again, I tell people, it's like, well, if you're saying a market is saturated, then you truly don't understand that market, because that means the way you're evaluating deals is you're first trying to evaluate properties and then working backwards. So what I mean by that is I want to invest in a beach house. So I'm going to go look in Destin because that's where I heard, all the cool places are 30A or Panama City Beach or wherever, like that area on the Gulf Coast. And I'm going to go look there and I'm going to look for properties for sale and see if they're a good deal. Oh, look, but then the revenue's this, and there's so many of them. The market's saturated. It's not a good deal. Well, did you stop and try to study the market first before you even did that? Did you try to study the guest demographic, the guest avatar, who's going there, and how many people and the typical size and stuff like that? Like, you have to do all this research before you even get started in looking for properties, and people just jump straight into looking for properties without even knowing why people are going to that market, besides they're going there for the beach. But it's like, but who's going there? What side? Like, tell me more. Tell me, give me the story behind the type of guest, where they're coming from, their travel habits, things like that. That's why Blue Ridge got destroyed compared to other markets. Is it down 50%? No, it's down like 20 to 30%, depending on bedroom count again. But, in this year, because who was going there? People from Atlanta and maybe surrounding areas, but not Nashville because they're going to Gatlinburg. They're going to the Smokies. Probably not Charlotte because they're going to Western North Carolina and the high country North Carolina. It's literally people from Atlanta were going to North Georgia. And that's it. And then once people from Atlanta can start flying to other places and traveling to other places, guess what they do? They start doing that. And then all of a sudden, Blue Ridge took a hit. And it's like, people weren't studying out who is the guest avatar or the guest demographic and where they're coming from. They didn't study that. And that's why a lot of people get hit. And that's why they go into a market and, today upset and call it saturated, because they don't understand the market and what's going on.
If you look at just a massive DMA of 5 to 6 hour drive time, there's a reason that Gatlinburg has been the gold standard, because there's, I don't remember what the number is. It's 37 million people or something like that can drive within 5 hours from Cleveland to Roanoke to Atlanta to wherever. And you think about it, if somebody's coming from Virginia or wherever, they're driving past Western North Carolina, the Banner Elk, Beach Mountain, Sugar Mountain, Asheville, Maggie, all those areas to get to Gatlinburg. Then they got to drive by Gatlinburg to get to the Blue Ridge Mountains. So you need to think about those things of where they're coming from. So what I look at is if I draw a DMA and I put it on North Carolina, like I own a property there, I'm marketing everything above North Carolina so they don't pass me to go to Gatlinburg. So I'm not marketing to Nashville to bring them, through Knoxville and not get off of the world's largest Buc-ee's and turn right and go to Pigeon Forge,
Yeah.
right? I'm literally not marketing in my hometown. And I talk about like how I use the buy sell trade groups, Kenny. I don't even do that for the North Carolina property. And that's all because I know exactly what you're talking about. That buyer persona, that's a fictitious representation of my ideal buyer. People refer to it as an avatar. I didn't like that movie, so I don't use that term. So, anyways, that's the critical component. And you have to know this stuff before you buy. For many,
Yeah.
Kenny, it's too late. They already own. They own the average 3-2. They own the average 4-bedroom. They've even gone into Gatlinburg, which there is saturation of mod pools, indoor pools, game rooms, that type of stuff. And they think that stuff is what's going to separate them when they have that average property with, it's 15 minutes to whatever, traffic generator. It's going to be one of the 3 locales or Dollywood or over or whatever. And they don't have this. They don't have that type of a view. What do they do? What do they do if they're in a negative cash flow position, because of Airbnbbust, which really means they just made a poor investment on the front end?
Well, number one, I mean, it's kind of like, I hope that they, they had some savings, and I hope that they thought of the investment as a long-term investment, not necessarily a short-term get rich quick, which a lot of people don't. They see like 1 year, I'm going to make $100,000. Boom. But in reality, you're buying real estate, this is for years. So I hope that they did that. If they didn't, and that's past tense, then they're kind of in trouble. And maybe they should go back and listen to some of our other podcasts where we talked about that. I'm losing money each month, and what should I do? Parts 1 and 2, right? But I mean, it's tough. There's going to be a lot of people like that in some markets, and so to kind of, I guess, wrap up my side of this Airbnb bust thing, though, is there an Airbnb bust? Yes, for some people there is, but for others there isn't. But can you generalize that across the entire market? No, you can't. So for new investors out there looking to invest, you have to be extra careful. You have to do your due diligence. You have to do that due diligence and understand the buyer persona, or guest, whatever we want to call it. And you have to do that research before you start looking for properties, before you even talk to a realtor. Because a realtor, their job is to sell you a property, right? And they're going to tell you the great wave of 21 and 22, or even 20 as well. But in reality, you need to understand how properties or what drives people to that market and what really does well in that market, what I call the sweet spots, before you even go into that market and start looking for properties and speaking to realtors. So,
Kenny, you're 100% correct. I think that it is super important, if you are not generating positive cash flow today, to assess your overall financial position. Can you weather 24 months of carry costs if you're losing money today? Because I'm a believer that it's probably going to get a little bit worse as we go into the slow season and through the winter season. I predicted a 15 to 25% drop in rents last year. I think most people have seen that going from 2022 into 2023. I think we could see another 10, 15%. And that's across the industry. It's going to vary location by location. If you are an investor today, you are looking to buy, I don't think, Kenny, there's enough people that know what happened during the downturn of, really the latter part of 8, 9, 10, 11. Drive-in vacation rental markets are typically the most secure. People tend to not want to spend $1,000 or, $2,000 or $3,000 to fly the family, to Hawaii, or fly the family to Whistler, British Columbia, or fly from New York or Chicago to Miami. Chicagoans now, it's much easier for them to drive to Lake of the Ozarks or Branson. From Nashville, it's much easier for people, and just psychologically, to spend $150 to, fill up the Suburban and drive down to Destin or Gulf Shores. Kenny, where you live, they're driving to the Finger Lakes or hopefully to Watkins Glen, or to the Poconos or whatever that is. And that's where there's a little bit more security, in my opinion. You still need all of those other factors. But at the end of the day, folks, this is time for you to do an audit of your financial situation. And not just your short-term rental or rentals in your portfolio, but what is your financial position behind it? And if you're getting into the market today, or you're looking to audit your existing property and maybe make some type of change, you need to underwrite your existing properties with the performance you should be using to buy as well. I want to say that one more time. You don't just sit down and look at your bank account and think about it. You need to run your existing property. And here's the deal. I sold a Beach Mountain property actually 45 days ago, Kenny, because my identification for my 1031 ended last night. This is day 46. I sold a property 46 days ago because I went through the underwriting process exactly the way I did when I purchased it 15 months prior to that. And what I saw is it was an okay investment, but I believed that I could sell it, 1031 it, and redeploy that into something else that I could generate more cash flow out of. So if you don't know how to run a pro forma, like a legitimate underwriting, then I would strongly advise you to use one of these two Instagrams and DM Kenny or DM myself, because you need to learn how to run a pro forma, or you just need to hire him to find your next property and do the underwriting for you. Because that's where every one of you that are in a challenging position today made your mistake on the purchase.
Yeah, that's very true.
Every time, every one of them. So be diligent, go through a personal audit, look at where you stand right now, understand cash flow. I would probably, if you're generating $20,000 a year in net, not gross, net cash. Property's doing 50,000 gross, mortgage, cleaning, interest, taxes, permitting fees, Airbnb, OTA fees, everything, marketing dollars, and subtract all that from your 50, and you have $10,000 left over, and you're like, holy shit, that's less than $1,000 a month. Well, now let's budget another 15% drop. Make sure you've got the carry costs behind that, and you're not going to have to dip into your 401k, your savings, your SEP, whatever that is. If it is, then you may need to look at making a change. And I'm going to tell you, Kenny and I are both here, to help you. That's why we do this stuff. That's why I built a super team, because we want to make sure that you guys have a super life. Thanks for joining Kenny and I on this episode of STRnomics. Kenny, have a great weekend. Thanks for getting up so early on a Saturday morning to do this.
Later than your time, but it's all good.
Well, that's true. We'll see you guys later. Happy hosting, everybody.